Good evening. I would like to warmly welcome you to our first meeting after the summer hiatus and for the Ward 1 NPA. And first off, I would like to just go through the agenda. And then we'll go around and introduce ourselves and go into announcements and then public speaking. So
you should pick up a microphone.
I should pick up a microphone. Okay. And so my name is Tom Darenthal. I'm going to be the facilitator, and you can see what our schedule looks like. We're starting a little bit late, but then we're going to, after going through the agenda, we'll do introductions, announcements. We'll have the speak out time where you can bring up issues that you have. And then Gary Golden's going to talk about the school, the school situation. And then that'll be followed by city councilor updates. Although I understand one of our councilors may be late, and if so, we'll juggle the schedule. And then Lori Anderson is going to talk about Centennial Woods. And who's talking about COLBARI? All right, we have a couple of people here from Public Works. They're going to talk about the intersection down at the bottom of Colchester Avenue, and followed by a city transportation initiatives. And that would conclude our meeting. So with that, again, my name's Tom Darenthal. We're going to go around the room, and if you want to say who you are, and then if you have an announcement, a short announcement, please make it at this time. So we're going to start right here. And you need a microphone.
Yeah, but you go for that one. That's the long one. Here's the short one.
Who's got one?
Hi, I'm Laura Wheelock. I am the city engineer with Public Works.
Maddie Sender, Public Works Engineer with the City of Burlington Public Works.
Hi, I'm Steve Spear. I'm the Consultant Project Manager for the COLBARI intersection.
Carter Newbeezer, Riverside Ave, and Ward 1 City Councilor.
Richard Hilliard, High Grove Court.
So there's wireless mics out here. So press the little button until the green light.
It's on. Nancy Kirby from Colchester Avenue. Sharon Busher, East Avenue. My two brief announcements are, the first is that I was hoping someone from the hospital would be here, but they are on the agenda for the 17th, the Development Review Board consent item. I don't really know much about that item, but I was hoping someone would speak to it. But the DRB meeting on the 17th starts at 5 p.m. and you can zoom in, and also you can look at what is relevant. It's on consent, so it looks like it's minor, but I can't speak to it. That's number one. Number two, I can speak to. Today, there was an City Council Ordinance Committee meeting that dealt with the neighborhood code that came out of Planning Commission last week and was referred to the council. It was on their Monday night agenda on consent. Took it up today. And they're going to hold another meeting. This is what's relevant. This coming Monday at 12:30. Once again, I'm not sure of the location. It might be the Sharon Busher conference room at City Hall, or it may not be, but you can always zoom in to that meeting. There is a deadline for action by October 1st. And the focus of this is really on the second structure that is allowed in the neighborhood code. And the focal point is the height of that second structure, the number of units, and other criteria like that. And so I urge people to please participate. Unfortunately, the public hearing that the Planning Commission held, I was the only attendee, and I've been following this, but I could take up a whole meeting sharing all the information I have. But I want people to participate. A lot of people in this room care about this, and that's all.
Hi, I'm Dave Cawley. I live on Nash Place, which is part of the old East End.
Oh, keep this.
I'm upstairs. And I think it might be of interest that we are now hosting 2 groups of Narcotics Anonymous here on Thursdays and Friday nights. And Thursdays, they've been coming for years. They're wonderful guests. I think they clean up better than anybody. The Friday group is new, and the reason they're here is because they asked me, because they're meeting down near Church Street, one of those churches, and they were afraid to go to meetings because of all the threats.
Catherine?
I'm Catherine Verman. I live on North Street.
Silver Flash. I live off of East Avenue at co-housing.
Lori Anderson. I'm with UVM Natural Areas Program.
Selena Colburn, and I live on Latham Court. My backyard abuts Sharon's backyard. We're backyard neighbors.
Hi, I'm Neela Grant, Councilor for Central District, and I am visiting with one announcement.
Oh, can I make the announcement?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. If we could bring up just a quick web page, thank you so much. July 18th, 5:30. So when you go to the city's website, click on calendar. This is a little meeting, 5:30 p.m., Public Safety Committee meeting. And when you click on that link, you will then click on meeting media so that you can watch the meeting. This meeting is extremely important. I'm not so sure that's a very flattering so photo of me. At this particular meeting, we had a presentation from our police department's recruitment team. There was a lot of important, valuable information that the general public does not know or understand. So when we look at the conversations, some of which have been heated, this is what you need to know in terms of the conversations about the cap. They were very frank and honest about what the situation was, especially with regards to the fact we are just not getting significant numbers of applications in order to build back. I thought it was very, very interesting, very sobering. And once again, I highly recommend, in order to help just kind of educate people where these conversations are coming from. The second presentation was from Marsha McCrombie. She is the first female battalion commander with our fire department. And she talked about a program that's upcoming called Prevent. It's a way to offer medically assisted treatment to people suffering from substance use disorder if the fire department makes a response to an overdose and they refuse transportation. They have what is referred to as MAT, medically assisted treatment, that's offered at the hospital, but what they're trying to do is more touch points for individuals to get them the help that they need. Also very, very powerful presentation. And just want to make everyone aware of that. I'm going to be doing more outreach about the Public Safety Committee meetings. The next one is on September 19th. It's actually going to be in the morning at 8 a.m. It will be posted on Monday. And the reason we're doing in the morning is because the community forum was rescheduled for the 19th in the evening. And if you can't attend in person, please attend by Zoom. And thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Livingston. I'm one of the 4 steering committee folks. Tom and Jonathan and Selena and I are our steering committee, and we welcome anyone else who'd love to join us. I do want to thank folks who are helping with our meeting tonight. Charlie, once again from Town Meeting TV, is helping film for us. And Anna Maria, I'm Carol. It's really good to have you here. Thank you so much. We learned recently that Fosca, who has been here for the past year, has moved on. And so we have people like Anna Maria, who this is not her job, but it's one of many of her jobs, she's jumped in as other members of CETO have to help us out with these meetings. So welcome and thank you so much. We appreciate it.
I am Angie Chapel-Sokol, and I'm married to Jonathan Chapel-Sokol, who has not yet had an opportunity to introduce himself.
You're on, Jonathan.
I'm Jonathan Chapel-Sokol. I'm on the steering committee and I'm married to Angie Chapel-Sokol.
Hi, Gary Golden Ward, go east and.
Okay. You have a microphone?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. I assisted at the beginning.
And Charlie?
You want me to run again?
No, you don't have to, but you should introduce
So
yourself.
I'm Charlie Giannoni. I work for CCTV, Tommy and Colby. Thank you.
Okay, and online we have a couple of people. Anne, can you introduce yourself? I think it's Anne. Is she on mute?
Better.
Hello?
This is why the meetings go on so long. Are they on mute? Okay. So we have Kate, Ann, and one of our state reps, Troy Hedrick. Troy, can you speak? I see him, but I can't hear him.
I can't see his listening. That's a joke.
All right, well, we can get them on. We'll let them introduce themselves later. The next issue on our agenda is Speakout. So really more than just announcements. It's a way to raise concerns and see how many people share those concerns. So the floor is open for Speakout. Yes.
How are you heating your dinner in a pan?
Far.
So
I'm Cyril. I want to share a few words about the Winooski Bridge and the I realize that's not the topic for tonight. It's more the intersection on our side of the Winooski Bridge. I can't remember the pronunciation for the acronym COLBARI or whatever, Colchester and
Colchester, Barrett, Riverside.
Thank you. So I have what I think of maybe a slightly different, although I see compatriots, Dave and other people that are concerned about the safety of the whole, I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it a mess, but a reality, the bridge and the intersection on this side, COLBARI. So my focus on safety has been, comes from a number of occasions, including I don't want to call it a walk by, but an observation one afternoon, where for people that haven't walked on the bridge or at the intersection, I'd highly encourage people to do so. And the quick reality is, at least at relatively high traffic times, say 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is, I think, approximately the time we were down there, it's a very scary place to be. And it probably doesn't surprise you to have me or anybody say that, because there are a lot of cars whizzing through a lot of lanes. So my quick take on what I would like to see in that location is reduced lanes and a single lane roundabout. My understanding is that it's been, I don't know what to say, asserted or proven or at least acknowledged, that's the word I'm looking for, that a single lane roundabout will fit in that location. And the problem from a traffic engineering point of view is that it does not meet the standards for volume throughput or whatever that correct term might be. In other words, it would get slowed down, and the symbol, or not the symbol, but the designation for how quickly you can move vehicles through a certain point would go from a C to an F. From my biased point of view, going from a C to an F would be fine, but doesn't mean everybody else in the city would agree with that. My quick take on the problem or the reality of that particular spot is that you've got essentially at least 4 roads that are single lane roads that feed into that area. So you've got Colchester Avenue, you've got Riverside Avenue, you've got East Allen Street and Main Street, in Winooski, Route 7.
No, I don't know.
So the problem from my perspective is if you've got single lane roads going into a certain choke point or a beautiful point, the Winooski Bridge and COLBARI, why would you expand the number of lanes? So both Riverside, Colchester Avenue, the other ones I mentioned, it'll be one more minute. Is that what you're looking for me to wrap up?
Well, I think since we're going to be talking about COLBARI,
Do you want me to do it later?
yeah.
Okay, can I just finish my thought? Why would you want to expand the number of lanes in a spot when you really want people to slow down there? And to promise to finish my point is that on safety, there are usually 2 ways. Safety mostly has to do with speed. And the ways to reduce speed, again, we happen to have radar gun and we saw people are going 35 to 50 approximately on that bridge. The way you reduce speed generally is 2 different ways. You reduce the number of lanes and you narrow the lanes that are there. So that's briefly my concern is let's have single lanes and a single lane roundabout and make it safe for everybody to enjoy the spot and not speed through it.
Okay. Other people for Speak Out? Sharon?
Yes. So I live on East Avenue, and as some people know, there have been some traffic calming and changes on East Avenue. And I don't represent this ward anymore, but some people still call me when they want to express concerns. And I've had an earful from people that live inside Burlington, not necessarily in Ward 1, and some people in South Burlington. I'm not sure if that design is complete. That's number one. And since there are people from DPW and Maddie was in charge of that, I don't know where you stand with that anymore. I think it's relevant. One factor that people talk about a lot is the intersection of University Road and East Avenue, and that pedestrian crossing and the stop sign, and the fact that people don't stop. They didn't stop when you were doing the work because there was you kind of eliminated that. And now people just fly through it. And so it's become less safe for pedestrians. And I'm hoping that there are some additional improvements that are going to occur at that intersection, because it has made it less safe as opposed to improving safety. The other thing is that traffic going from Colchester Avenue to Williston Road has sort of a serpentine pattern. So that has slowed traffic down a little bit, but it's a straight shot from Williston Road to Colchester Avenue, and it is increased the speed. So I don't know. Number one is my question for DPW, not tonight, but getting back to the NPA, and as broadly as you can to people in the community, is that design complete? Number two, is that intersection going to have additional enhancements, or is that complete? And who's going to monitor whether or not these traffic calming enhancements have been successful or not? Because merely to put them in place and not to evaluate is what I consider a failure. We need to know if this works or not. some people don't go on the road anymore. For those who want to reduce the number of cars, that's great. But for those that go on the road, it's still a very dangerous road. And I just needed to share that. Thank you. Want to say anything?
We have other speak out issues. If people online, all right, I don't see any raised hands.
Actually, I could say something.
All right, Charlie.
If it's okay for someone from March too. So I'm Charlie G, and I've been on the steering committees for the NPA since Bernie Sanders. A little bit off and on, but that's how long. So up until about 5 years ago, the NPAs for about 15 years had a professional staff person who helped them organize the meetings, run what became the Zoom feed. They helped us. They attended the steering committee meetings. They helped us do recruitment for the individual NPAs. When an NPA steering committee got low on people, they would help us replenish that, and they helped us organize citywide events, etc. They helped keep all the NPAs together because they would have that's where the all ward meetings came from. Unfortunately, about 5 years ago, CEDO stopped that. And so we totally lost that. So now the assistance that we get from CEDO is someone to manage the Zoom feed, which is really not critical to our mission, and a little bit of paperwork, a tiny bit of paper. So personally, I would like to see that position eliminated. And I would like to see the NPAs hire like an LLC consultant, which can be any steering committee member in the city that has knowledge of the NPAs. So I would like that position to be eliminated, not expanded, which is what CEDO is suggesting. So in other words, let's say I would do this. So I would set up an LLC, and so called like community consultant. And I would go to all the steering committee meetings if I could, because they overlap. And I would go to all the NPA meetings, and I would always be there to like help the 3 wards that totally collapsed last year. See, then I would be there as a staff member to keep them going and do recruitment and to keep them in touch with the other NPAs, et cetera. You see?
So you want that to happen?
Right. I'd like to see the NPAs sever their tie with CEDO for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, because they're paying that position $30 and it's about to expand up to like $40 or $45, $50,000. I'm saying eliminate that position and hire someone as an NPA staff person with an LLC so it can be paid, and which would allow the NPAs to go back to the stability that they had and the strength that they had 5, 10, 15 years ago. Because right now you're seeing the turnover in the steering committees is ferocious. People get on a steering committee now and they generally, not like this ward, but most of the other wards have almost no one that's been on the steering committee for 2 years. There's not a lot of those left. In the past, okay, and the reason that's happening is because people are getting overwhelmed. And so they're saying, oh, I've got to get away from this, instead of saying, I can step back because we've got this consultant who's still there and can keep this thing going while I take a break for 3 months. You see? So that's the sort of thing I'm trying to get back to. So I'll talk to the city council subcommittee that has a standing committee that has to do with this in next week. And then I'll basically go to the city council on a following Monday evening and give a little presentation there. Hopefully it'll be more than 2 minutes, but I'm just saying that I've been doing this a long time, and the NPAs used to be much, much stronger when they had someone whose job it was to make sure that the NPAs were talking to each other and were basically thriving. And we lost that about 5 years ago. So you're going to hear a lot more about this. It's going to be controversial because CEDO's going to kick and scream, but
all right,
that's what I'd like to see happen.
How did we lose it 5 years ago?
No. It changed 5 years ago because of the pandemic.
Oh.
And so that staff, actually, it changed 5 years ago because they took.
We're gonna move on.
Okay. CEDO made a change 5 years ago. without talking to the NPAs. They did a unilateral change of the staff and we lost the staff.
All right, this is the last call for Speak Out. I don't see any hands. So we're going to move forward to the Burlington School Commissioner update. Gary? Are you going to come over here? Do you have a presentation, song and dance?
Not sorry,
Okay.
blew out my knee Monday, so I had taken a little while to get up to the one.
Okay.
So my name is Gary Golden. I'm the East District School Commissioner. The update is really quick, and then I'm going to ask a favor of you. So I'm going to do the updates quick. We are still in the middle of several construction projects that one, the IAA, the old Wheeler, is still being worked on this year. That project should be ending next summer. The students from the school are housed either at St. Mark's, the upperclassmen, and the K2 students are at Sarah Holbrook. And that transition has gone relatively well. Sarah Holbrook's closing this summer sort of threw that up in the air, waiting for land trust to take over the property, sign new agreements, etc. The Eagle Bay Academy, which is the old On Top Horizons programs, that building is opening as we speak. I think there's still some bridge construction. That little iron bridge that goes over the bike path has to be upgraded for vans and buses. Otherwise, it's about to be complete. And then we're 2 years away from the high school. The announcement for that is if you'd like to see your name on the last construction beam before it gets placed, you can make arrangements to the central office for a time to go by and sign that before it becomes a piece of history. So the walls are up, but of course the floors and then inside takes much longer than the outside. So that's the update. The favor comes in talking about the next phase of our city around money, and that's the budget, the school budget. So we're already starting to talk about what that's going to look like and trying to see what the initial numbers are. Governor Scott, in a change, has written everyone involved with either the Superintendent's Association, School Board Association, Principal Association, to say that his office is going to be more active early. And that he doesn't call it this, but interim Education Secretary Saunders will be making, continuing her visits. We've seen her several times since she was appointed. So for that, the picture of that is, it's business as usual for them, other than he's going to get involved early. So my favor to you is to ask you to write me. I don't know when we would have time to maybe kind of open the floor to hear what your concerns around the budget are. But if you want to contact me directly with questions, concerns, realities, this is a fairly affluent room as far as Ward 1 goes and Ward 8, which I also serve. You walk around the corner. When I was canvassing this winter, met many people who were actively worried about making ends meet based on the changes. And my reassurances when we were looking at a 16%, 17% increase were pretty hollow. So I welcome your input perhaps that way, as a way for me to have not talking points, but at least concerns I can raise as we start meeting in the Finance Committee, which is where a lot of the work is done. And then the open board meetings that will turn pretty squarely toward the budget, November, particularly December, as some cuts or changes start circulating we'll see a lot of affected groups coming to school. But until then, please let me know what you're thinking. I'll post tomorrow on Front Porch Forum, so you'll have my email handy for you. And let me know what you're thinking so I can be a better representative.
We have questions?
Is just trying to remember. So November. Oh,
Right on your seat there.
yep.
I got it. November is around the time that we'll start to see like a draft budget from the school board or not, or more just like points of discussion.
Yeah, right now, because of the board retreat, we have a new member that came on, so we split up our retreat for a day in the summer and then a day in the fall to introduce the budget. The superintendent and his cabinet is listening to our initial concerns about the board concerns about where we need the budget to go. And so they will take, each time we meet and they hear those concerns, they go back and make some adjustments. So last year, a couple of us made a request in December that, if student numbers are dropping and teacher numbers then are affected dropping, why isn't there commensurate administrative lowering of numbers? And that was reflected in the options that Superintendent Planning gave us to vote on. That if there were another, it wasn't up to $1 million of salaries and benefits that weren't put in place, basically replacing positions that are funded with funds. So there's room to be heard in those meetings. I'm your conduit for that. Though they are posted, you're welcome to come to those finance meetings. They're monthly at the moment, but they're about to switch to before every board meeting. So there's a lot that's hatched out there. So
Is it more like January when we'll start to see a draft budget?
we will finalize our board concerns and objectives for the budget in October. Those will be, so that's the board piece, and then the principals and their advisory groups will be given their RISE money numbers. The RISE is the response to intervention, et cetera. And each school is given a per student amount that that advisory group then will decide how to spend. So a school that has behavior issues, behavior interventions are part of that solution, and they're funded through that RISE money. The reading program is pretty set, that's standard, but each school can really respond to how they want with staffing through that money. So that's October. November, both of those, and then the cabinet, that's the helping Tom manage the district. Those three groups and their objectives will be considered and meshed. We're basically waiting for the Agency of Education's December 1st letter that tells us what money we're looking at. And it's not looking great. There was $63 million adjustment from the education fund last year to offset the loss of COVID funds, and that money was spread out through all the districts. It was part of the losing that 5% cap. We're not getting the weeds for that. But that affects us this year. And then we're also looking at another $50 million adjustment. So we're already in the hole as far as the education fund goes. And that's where all the money goes from every county city. And some budget money and lottery money. So it's a complicated process, but I'm hoping you'll give me your concerns early so that I can reflect those in the times that I'm in discussion about them.
And any other questions? Yeah. Tim?
Thanks. Thank you again for all your work and promise challenging few months. Asking on behalf of a 9-year-old in my family, and not put you on the spot, but are the IAA Is the IA construction work, does it appear to be on schedule for the kids getting back next year?
Yes, we were delayed. There's a limited amount of equipment that can do the geothermal drilling, and they broke the machine in May. So that's lost a couple of months, but they're still thinking they were able to work around that. Because that's really out in the yard. That's, you know, it does delay the connection between the geothermal system and the building, but everything we're hearing is summer completion. But I'll go back and review that and let you know if I'm wrong. If not, it'll be within a month or so. That's a drag, but it's maybe our construction reality. We're just really hoping we're at 2 years for the high school. That mean you'll be a senior though? Or you're doing this shoot, you're a sophomore. I mean, you're a junior now. Sorry. You'll always need to brag that you went to high school in the mall, except by the time you could say that, nobody would know what a mall was. So, sorry. Okay, take a start. So you dance?
Yeah, based on what Celine said, I think the sooner we can get sort of a skeleton idea of what the budget's going to look like, then people will be able to participate more. I personally would find it very difficult to say, well, I think this needs to be prioritized over that,
Right.
having no context.
Well, okay, I agree with you. But I also will say, don't expect a lot of differences. We're still looking at a double-digit insurance bump, which will drive things. We're probably looking at a double-digit CLA. The appraisal number will go up.
But whatever you could do would be appreciated.
Well, right now, it's just saying, where can we hold the line?
Yeah.
And the more you say that to me, the more I can go to the board and say, there were rumblings that the board should have asked for more last year. So we're not convinced that there are people who are really concerned and adversely impacted by what we do.
Okay.
So if you tell me that, I can put that out there.
Someone else had their hand up there, Angie?
Yes, Gary, I just wanted to thank you for being a public official and inviting us to offer you some feedback and some insight and some suggestions. That doesn't always happen.
We realize it's making my life easier about this. I can blame you. See,
Yeah.
Angie at that meeting said, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we're going on to city council updates, and I understand there was a lot of interesting things that went on last night. Is that true? Is that what you guys are going to talk about?
Happy to talk about that.
Or did you have something else?
I am behind the post.
You can speak up. You're right here. Yeah, I will get out of your way. You got chairs over here. Yeah, pull a chair. You have to share mine, so I can-
Liner.
Hey y'all. Yeah, no, we did have a good meeting on Monday. I think it landed in a really good spot actually. All in all. Sharon's telling me to speak up. I'll be louder. I'm noticing that I'm not as loud as I think I'm being. Yeah, I think we had a good meeting. I think it landed in a good spot. I posted I'm more eloquent when I write, but an update on a second update on the substance of like what the resolutions actually ended up being, because there was a long back and forth all Monday and then into the council meeting of what we were going to land on in terms of voting. Two of the resolutions, one around gun safety, did pass with some amendments. there was one around getting where it landed up is getting information from the chief's perspective on recruitment efforts and what we think the officer cap number should be. And so that will come back December 9th to the council. That report. There was another resolution speaking about the police station renovation. And that one was bumped to the meeting on the 23rd. And the last one, the kiosk. That's right. Yeah, the kiosk. So there was a conversation around some sort of kiosk downtown as a measure to as a hub to deliver public safety services. I think the conversations are still ongoing. I have a number of questions. Yeah, open to the idea, but I think that's the high level of what we discussed. But happy to take questions and if you want to speak to them at all.
Yes, no, I think that was a good summary. Of course, it's been a while since we've had an NPA, so we've had other meetings. I try to make a little list. I think Carter covered the highest points from Monday, some of which were a little bit contentious, but we got through it. But we did have the previous meeting. I think probably the biggest ticket item was the F-35 resolution on requesting our congressional delegation to go back to the military and ask them to reconsider the F-35 basing at the base. That passed, but that felt like took up a lot of time and energy. Then the other sort of a lot of things are important, so this is under inclusive, but the other thing that I think has taken up at least a good deal of my time was the police oversight issue, but specifically because I'm on that committee, the charter change piece of it. And there's certain, and I frankly get confused about this, but there's certain meeting requirements to get something actually on the charter or on the ballot to change the charter language. And so we met those requirements. So you will see a charter change proposal on the March ballot with respect to police oversight. That's only a piece of police oversight. There's another piece of it, which takes place in ordinances. And there's still ongoing work on that. Are you on ordinance? No, I'm not on the ordinance committee, but there's another part of it. And I think many people were not completely happy with the way that turned out, myself included, but that is democracy, and I think it's an important step forward. So happy to answer questions about that. Those were my list of sort of the big ticket items. There was something on Monday night's agenda about funding a position for the NPAs. I know that we discussed that, but we could talk about that a little bit. Although I confess I completely understand that, but we can chat about that.
We got questions, Catherine?
So, can you just explain the thinking behind the police station change? And also, I just wanted to know more about this kiosk too, other than, if you could go into a little bit of detail about both.
So, on the police station change, I don't know that I can speak definitively on the thinking of it. I didn't author it, but I think that the thinking of it is that, we have the Pomerleaus donated that building. It used to be a paint store back not too long ago. So years and years and years ago, Sharon may know the actual date. It has been the police station since then. It is a building that has been in long need of attention. When I used to be down there, it was not lovely, and that was years ago now. And I think that the thinking is that at least getting this on the agenda to some extent and on people's minds to some extent is a signal to the police department that we care about the police department, and that it's a recruit. It's part of our effort to improve police recruitment. No one single thing is going to improve our police recruitment effort, but caring about where this particular group of city employees work is part of it. And, we've had a long-standing issue of, deferred investment in infrastructure in the city, which is something that I didn't realize and still sort of coming to grips with. But I think it's a significant issue. So I think that was that piece. The kiosk thing, I'm less connected with. I think it was an idea about having a sort of a place, a sort of station on public safety, and I think it needs to go back and sort of.
Where would that be?
I think I think it's still under consideration, and I think frankly the mayor's got some stuff that she's working on, and I think it's sort of a work in progress. This latest iteration was City Hall Park, but I think there's some flexibility in there. But as Carter said, that was deferred. So that was a resolution that was not voted on Monday night. We deferred it, postponed it.
Richard's next, and then Sharon.
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Most of us were taken by surprise early in the spring about all of a sudden the budget deficits. So we're 2 months into the new fiscal year, almost a quarter of the way through. And I wonder if you can tell us where we stand in the new fiscal year relative to the budget. What are your actuals against budget?
Oh, I can't speak to that, Richard.
Can anyone?
I don't know if Carter can.
I do not have the budget to actuals. I could email it or something. I would have to ask probably Catherine.
Because should we not have oversight of the financials in this city before we spend endless hours worrying about the police? Shouldn't we be worrying about who's the poacher and who's the gamekeeper?
Councilor Grant did have her hand up. I just wanted just one thing around process on the budget. I mean, I'll just say at a high level, the next fiscal year will also be incredibly difficult and tight. We still used a good chunk, a couple million. I think it was close to $4 million in one-time funds that we had to spend from the feds by this October, or at least have dedicated. So we're going to have to make up that deficit. And again, all the rising costs in healthcare, et cetera, are going to be difficult to deal with. So yeah, it's going to be another hard fiscal year, which is not a exciting fact, but yeah.
Milo wanted to say something.
Milo?
Yes, I would like to, I also focus on public safety, but this Monday night at the Board of Finance meeting, they introduced on the city's open portal where you can get a lot of information. They have now added information on the budget. I recommend so that you can enter dates and the information that would populate based on what has been entered into the system year to date. But if you watch that presentation from Nancy Stetson in terms of how to run that information, I think that will help with some of those questions. I thought it was a great presentation and is offering some more transparency, especially during this time of significant gap and how difficult at least the next 2 years are going to be. Thank you.
Yes, just to speak to that, the form is going to be a dashboard form because I zoom into the Board of Finance. And also from our experience, the Board of Finance is going to get regular updates on where we are with the budget, where we, the city, are with the budget. So, and as Milo said, I'm sorry, Councilor Grant, but anyways, said that, residents can look for that. And I think based on this, maybe the counselors can also recommend not only having someone have to dig through the Board of Finance, but maybe recommend to the mayor and the administration, the Board of Finance, to have that put somewhere where the public can easily access that information, I think that would be a really good step. My question had to do with, once again, a comment that where you ended on Monday night was an attempt at cooperation around a really important topic, public safety. And I think you heard it from Karen Long, happens to be in our ward, make that statement, but from others that we need everybody working together. I don't care whether you're a Dem, a progressive, an independent. We need everyone working together to solve this problem. And I hope that you also will engage with residents who might have some great ideas outside of the council and the mayor's administration. So my concern was the resolution dealing with, which has been postponed, about the police station. And it was probably in the 90s. I was on the council, dark hair, walked the building with Mr. Parmelo. Tony was wonderful. But anyways, it's been a long time. I'm not saying the police aren't deserving of a new structure, but I thought when we were talking about Memorial Auditorium and other buildings and with the school, that we had reached our budgetary cap, that we couldn't bond or borrow any more money. So this resolution hit me like right between the eyes. And I went, how are we going to do that? What is this? Is this realistic? And I don't know the answer to that question, but it was troubling to me to see that. The second part of this is that, and this goes to you, Gary, also, that as one of the residents that lives in this city who is on a fixed income, I am barely able to make the tax increase that has moved forward. So when I hear people suggesting additional dollars, I'm not saying that we don't have things that we are going to have to invest in, but we've got to be careful. I don't want to have to leave this city because I can't afford to live here. And I'm coming to that point, and that's a really sad point. So I want some sensitivity from elected officials to understand where people are at. Thank you.
Jonathan, and then Carol,
I just want to maybe speak to the police reno too.
want to respond?
Well, just very briefly, which is I don't think conversations are still very early on. Prior to this resolution, CEDO has been thinking through the need to have a police station that's more functional. Same thing with Fire Station 1 downtown. Like there's the floor of that building. I don't know if it's imminent, like it's not going to happen tomorrow, but there's a concern in the near term that can't support fire trucks. So you could literally just have the floor drop out from them. So I think as part of this conversation around the memorial block, I can't remember the term for it now.
The gateway to Burlington.
Yes, the gateway. That's right. Yeah. So that block there is potentially, and it's all very idea phase, maybe ways that we can solve this problem without running into the issue of having to take out a lot more debt. So there's nothing there together enough to give information on it or have a steadfast opinion on it.
Jonathan?
And I'm going to just quickly editorialize on that as long as I have the mic. The library is working on a $35 million renovation project. You may have heard that Senator Leahy has a photo exhibit there. It was being set up in the Fletcher room, and the rain came in and the ceiling crumbled, and we had to move it to the Pickering room. So there is a lot of deferred maintenance, which you've mentioned. We think the library is very important to the city and holds a very important spot in the city. So if money ever does appear, we want to make sure that the library can get a piece of that. That's the editorial comment. I want to go back to the question about the budget. And I don't think it's come to city council yet, but is there any insight about the operational efficiency report, which one would hope would help by FY 26 or 7 to actually make budgets a little bit less constrained?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know if you want to speak to this too, but Yes, I guess I agree. And I will have to circle back. So I'll send an email after this meeting. I think we should be getting that information very shortly. But I can get a hard date or something.
You are right, though, that it has not come before the city council. There wasn't a date certain by when.
There wasn't a date certain, but we said early fall. So I can circle back and try to understand where that is.
Carol?
Thing at the police station when it was on the scan. You know what I'm saying?
Just really briefly,
You're right.
all of us reading 7 days, all of us walking downtown, all of us caring deeply about the city. I know I'm not alone in feeling really troubled. But I also feel like it's part of my responsibility to help figure it out. And it's really, really complicated. It's not as easy, it's not simply increasing the number of police. It's not simply having places for people to live who at this point don't have houses. It's there's addiction, there's a whole level, a whole bunch of issues. And as a leader on the steering committee, I really feel, and maybe it's just from hearing Kamala last night, I really feel like there's an interest in this community to work together to figure things out. And that we don't want to just nail particular individuals or decision makers and say, get on it. We know you're on it. We know you're working really hard on it. But I think some of it, as a steering committee, what we can do in NPA is inform ourselves about the issues and how complex they are and what this means. For each of those different silos of folks who are struggling, because they're not all dealing with the same thing. And so I guess I would look to any of you to give guidance to the steering committee around, how can we lead conversations? What kinds of information do we all need? Who would be good to have come talk to us? What do you all need from us in terms of feedback and information, so that we have continual conversations about this rather than, oh God, we can just do what was in 7 days after. We've all seen that over and over. It gets really discouraging, but we love our city and we're not alone. And a lot of cities in this country are going through the same thing. So I just think there's a lot of energy that's in a positive way that we can pull together and figure this out. But we need information in order to do that. Thank you.
City meeting. There is so much information, data that's given, and I will continue to do. I'm actually asking that the meeting be swiped out for different meetings, so it can be also on town meeting TV, because believe it or not, that particular meeting isn't. It was never budgeted for town meeting TV, and so now I just really think it's something we need to be doing, but it has that information. And I want to also talk about the topic of, the chief said something really great at a press conference after the tragic shooting on Church Street. He said that this is a partnership. That it's a partnership. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. And what we need to help the department do is to communicate how this partnership works. What does the department need from the community? So for example, if we're trying to identify someone, where exactly does the public go to do the videos? Like there will be, and the press releases will reference videos and sometimes have pictures, but not consistently. So these are the things that will be discussed. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks. Carter, I'm sending you something right now on the I'm Reverend Mark Hughes. I'm the executive director of the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. I'm also your commander, Burlington Post 782, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and I'm the state co-chair of the Health Equity Advisory Commission. Is that enough? Yeah. So I'm sending you a note right now, Carter, so I don't have to get into too deeply into this, but I was curious with the proposals, and I did review all 4 of them. And I do realize you only got to two, and I thank you for taking the call the other day and discussing. Are these, I'm curious to your point is are these budgeted proposals? Have they already been factored into the already scarce budget, to Sharon's point? And I do think we're capped out as well. That's part one.
The two that passed, well, so the two that passed, the way that there's not a needed pay for, meaning that it's a report from the chief. He has the information. It's his staff time, obviously a cost to his staff time, but it's not going to change the budget. And
I think only one had money.
The gun safety, yeah.
I don't know if this is the one that you passed, but I think only one of the.
That one was the kiosk, and so that one we will have more conversation about.
Is that budgeted?
It asked for us to figure that out for FY26, and then said that as part of that the mayor's office would find 50,000 to do that in the original proposal. But again, I don't think we're there. The gun safety, the mayor has been talking about putting together a more formal process to make sure that all the different levels of electeds are sort of consulted and brought together around what's our common agenda for the city. We have a lobbyist as a city, and Emma's point being, the mayor's point, I should say, being it shouldn't just be, the mayor deciding what the agenda is. It should be all of us collectively having some sort of process to determine that. And so I think the gun safety fits into that well. And I think I've heard from state reps, particularly following the shooting, that gun safety needs to be a priority, particularly the 2014 charter change, whatever else we should be doing. I mean, I think that we could go a lot farther on the statewide level than even the 2014 charter change. And the resolution also speaks to increases in penalties on the city ordinance side, and then recommendations for penalties, and also some preventative measures around youth violence in the legislature, or at least ask them to look at that.
Yeah, thank you. And just to follow up on that, the language that was in the cap resolution, what it was talking about, the general fund dollars that were freed up by reducing the number of uniform officers was to be used to reduce the demand on police. And I kind of testified to this effect when I was on the meeting the other night. And I provided some clarity that was an excerpt from former Councilor Hightower's resolution from 2020, the racial justice resolution. It was actually the racial justice through economic and criminal justice resolution. I don't have a problem talking loud. It went on to say, including a community-based cultural empowerment center, a minority-owned business procurement program, a capital access program, as well as operational capacity for the racial equity, inclusion, and belonging function of the city, and funding for a baseline assessment. The racial justice resolution also resolved that the city council declare racism as a citywide health crisis, and the city prioritized the eradication of systemic racism in the creation of a municipal budget. It was further established, it also established a requirement for systemic oppression, including systemic racism awareness training for the city 2 times a year for all employees of the city, 3 times for law enforcement officers, which at this point in the game, we'll come back to that. And also finally, it also established a task force to consider an apology for reparations for chattel slavery. So that was the purpose of the divestment from law enforcement. That's the conversation that we haven't had over the last 3 years, which is why all of this work, to include the department itself, is languishing right now. So I want to work with you. And I feel personally invested in this because I was instrumental in the creation of the REIB department. So I want to work with the council and work with, I've already started with Councilor Grant and others, but I think as we continue to figure out a path forward from a budget perspective, and we begin the process of figuring out how we fund things that were not funded in light of the fact that none of this is funded, and it's as important as we said it was during that time. I hope it's still important to all of you today, still. So I hope we can work together to figure out how do we fund this work, because the reality is that there was no divestment from the law enforcement apparatus and a reinvestment back into marginalized communities. We reinvested back into law enforcement with raises in pay, with incentives for bonuses, with hiring of state police, with overtime and the like. Not to say that was good or bad, but that's where the money went, which means it didn't go here. This is racial equity. We made a commitment to it. I want to work with you to try to figure out how we keep our commitment. Thank you.
Thanks.
Briefly.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
All right, 30 seconds. Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out earlier this week, Mark. I look forward to talking more. I agree. There's a perception that we took money from the police department, but we didn't. We've only increased the police department's budget every year since 2020. The money that we put aside for the racial equity initiatives, including REIB, mostly came from one-time COVID funds in the budget. We came into this budget gap. That COVID money is no longer there, obviously. And so we need to figure out a way. And I also think staff is feeling demoralized in REIB across the board. And I can't remember, Milo, if you or Gene are on REIB, the subcommittee of the city council. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of work to do. And again, I don't want to speak for anybody else. My perception is that the city's approach was to take a beat and really not just jump into it to say that we did it, but to try to engage in that work authentically and also engage in that work in a way that's going to take in all city departments and not silo it to check a box. So that's not a very satisfying answer or exciting answer, but I do think is where we are generally.
All right.
Can I please just respond to that? Because there's just a slight mischaracterization that I think deserves correction.
We got it.
So, yep, I get that. So the thing is that it's important for us to understand, and this is just for context, so we can, as we move forward, that we're all on the same facts. The department was originally funded with real money, and it was later shifted over to one-time money. So it wasn't initially started with one-time money. So I just want to make that very clear. That happened in the previous administration. So very important. The other thing that's super duper important is as far as the work that has to be done and how we're trying to frame what actually needs to be done. It's important to understand that there was a fully functional REIB that was doing training for the city. For those who are in the room who work for the city, know that you received some of this training. You haven't received it lately, but in addition to training, there was a policy function, there was a data function, there was an outreach function. So the REIB, and I think this is critical, and I don't want for us to, and I'm not attacking you, Carter, because I respect you, love you. But the thing is I just don't want a false narrative that somehow or another this work had never been started and it was never institutionalized, because that's just not true.
Thanks. We are going to move on. And I apologize, we're a little bit behind schedule, but is Lori Anderson?
Right there. I'm right here.
You're right there. And come on up. You guys are done.
Yeah.
You can have a seat if you like.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Your choice. Prefer to stand, you can stand, but in any case, you'd like to use the mic.
Well, thank you for having me. Okay, to change the tone of things a little bit. I'm here to talk about Centennial Woods, a happy place where we all like to go. So my name is Lori Anderson and I grew up in Shelburne, Vermont, and went to Middlebury College and then moved out to Washington State for the next 36 years. And just came back to Vermont a few years ago and got hired at UVM to coordinate the Natural Areas program. I work with Brendan Fisher, who many of you know. He's the director of the program. And so I've been on the job since January and I'm still learning the job. But my purpose here tonight is I know that many of you walk in Centennial Woods, walk your dogs, spend time there. And so one of our goals with the Natural Areas program now is just to connect more with the community, to find out what concerns you have, and to be a partner with community members as well as all the other partners we have, the Nature Conservancy and Land Trust and students and faculty doing research. So I just wanted to say a couple of things, but mainly I'm just here so that you know who I am and how to contact me and express any concerns, and hopefully there will be opportunities in the coming years to work together, whether it's building trails or getting rid of invasive plant species or whatever it is that we're doing. I would love to involve the community and work together. I just wanted to say one thing about the Natural Areas program, as many of you know, is more than just Centennial Woods. There's UVM has 10 natural areas, and I'm sure most of you know the Summit Ridge of Mount Mansfield is owned by UVM. That's one of our natural areas. We have East Woods, which is off Swift Street, is it? Yeah. Colchester Bog, Shelburne Pond, Pease Mountain in Charlotte. So my job covers all of the natural areas. 50 years ago, Hub Vogelman inspired the Board of Trustees at UVM to establish these natural areas. So this year is the 50th anniversary, and Josh Benish has been working to put together some lectures, a lecture series, a series of walks out in the natural areas. And in November, there will be a symposium on November 20th. So I just brought along some of these and I'll make them available. It just describes some of the walks and lectures that you can go to in association with that. We've been interviewed by the people from across the fence. And so October will be a series of episodes on some of our natural areas. So look for that.
You want me to hand this out?
Well, I don't have enough for everybody, so I don't know what the best way is, but I'll just make them available for anyone who's really interested. And then if you go to UVM Talks and Walks on the Wild Side, if you Google that, it'll take you to the website that has all of the talks and walks listed. They started, I believe, in June, so some of them have already happened, but there's a couple left. And also I will mention that people are signing up. They're filling up. So some of them have gotten to capacity, and then not everyone who's wanted to go has been able to go. So if you want to go, sign up early. So as far as Centennial Woods, I am still kind of learning my way around Centennial Woods. We did a few things this past spring that some of you may have been aware of. We had a cleanup day with the students, and it was Brendan's idea to have free ice cream, which is always a good idea. So we invited students out on a Saturday to just do some cleanup in Centennial Woods. You may have been aware, there were people out there kind of doing their own trail building and putting in some of their own structures. Yeah. And we kind of wanted to just clear a lot of that stuff out and and just clean up the trails a little bit. So we had 35 students show up, and it was a really great day. I was really impressed that the students really care about that place and they really love it. So that's the kind of thing we'll probably do a little bit more of. Because my job involves stewarding the trails, but I don't have experience with trail building. I had the Appalachian Mountain Club come out this year and help me on a little section of trail that we've got some trails in there, as you know, that get really muddy. And so I've been trying to work on how do we improve the drainage on them. So we did a little trail building day with Appalachian Mountain Club, and we'll see when we approach the next mud season if their techniques work. And then if so, we may do some more rebuilding of trails. I know down trees are an issue. We have a student club. They love to go out there and use the chainsaws. They have chainsaw certification. And so we're working with them to clear the down trees. And because it's been summer, the students haven't been around. So I think, and with the windstorms we've had, we do have some trees, but we have been talking with that student club, and they know there's work to do, and they're excited to do it. Other things that have gone on, we have a lot of faculty who use Centennial Woods for their classes. Last year, we had some restoration projects happen. Some of it involves removing invasive plant species. Some of it involves improving drainage on trails, replanting with native species, trees and shrubs. We had one group do a beaver dam analog to try to divert the stream to reduce the erosion that was happening around a corner of the stream. So the students are going to be out there again this year doing those types of projects. And it's exciting because they get to learn about restoration. They get to do something that might have some positive impact. And I'm learning right along beside them. So plans for the future. Oh, I should mention that some of you probably saw some signs we had put up, and we were trying to organize a walk last spring, which never ended up happening. But I would still like to do that, is to just have the community, the neighbors come out into Centennial Woods, and, you know, we can talk about whatever things might be on people's minds. But can I just see a show of hands of like, is there anyone who might be interested in doing that if I schedule a walk? Okay. So I will work to do that this fall and put that out to, I think I may have collected some of your email addresses, but I'll probably just do it through another.
Can you put it out on Front Porch Forum?
Yes. Who can do that? Brendan maybe, or?
If you send it to me, I can do it.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
And my address is on the city's website.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I would like to do that, and that would be a chance just to hear what your concerns are. It sounds like we're running short of time tonight, so rather than have a discussion, we can. Oh, I don't know if any of you know, there was a grad student who actually completely designed an accessible trail that would start at our main entrance with across from the medical center with the kiosk there. And it would be a trail that would be wheelchair accessible, and it would go out maybe a half mile and come back. And so we've been working on that. We don't have the funding for it at the moment, but that's something that is part of the vision that we'd like to make happen out there. And I know, and I have talked with some neighbors about possibly do a trail that would connect. I can never say the name of it. Schmantz. Yeah. We have another one in South Burlington where I used to play pickleball that was like Samansky, and yeah. Yeah, to connect that, to build a little trail connector. And that's certainly an idea that seems to make sense to me. So we could talk about that some more and think about a plan for how to do that. Unfortunately, what I had to do with the accessible trail, because it comes near a wetland, I had to pay for a wetland delineation, which involves hiring a consultant, et cetera. And I think that might be the case with that little section there. I think it looked to me like it might be a wetland. So there is that issue. But these are things that we can talk about and work on. And then another thing that we started working on and wanted to get some students working on was just to have just a little bit better wayfinding in there with some good maps showing where the trails are and have the trails better marked. So these are our goals and aspirations, and I look forward to getting to know people and working with you and hearing your thoughts and ideas.
Tom?
Question?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to make this statement on behalf of a person who used to live in this ward but passed away. His name was Jared Wood, and he actually worked really hard to acknowledge the number of acres in Centennial Wood, and actually called the university out long before you were in Washington. But anyways, about the acreage shrinking. So on behalf of Jared and myself, I would hope that the university would maintain the acreage and protect it from encroachment. You had encroachment that happened that didn't occur with the new dorm that was now, scrapped. But I'm hoping that the university understands the value, and I'm not looking to access the woods as much as I care about the fallen trees, because they deteriorate and they create environments for mushrooms, etc. So I'm looking for animals and non-human. I value the woods for the woods, and I want them to be there for the animals and for our environment. And if the people like to enjoy it, so be it. But keep the acreage, protect encroachment, and leave some of the fallen trees down. It's not manicured woods. This is a natural area. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Eric Monica, 60 Grove Street. Sorry, came late. So just to maybe pivot off of Sharon's comment a little bit, since we arrived relatively recently in sort of the memory of folks who worked on Ward 1 community issues for many, many years. UVM originally dedicated a portion, as you probably may know, of Centennial Woods back with the first UVM city agreement back in late 80s, early 90s. And Sharon and I were both involved as city councilors at the time. And just to Sharon's point, there was a tremendous amount of resistance by the university to dedicate perpetually all of what most of us consider to be Centennial Woods. If I'm recalling the numbers right, UVM only dedicated approximately 60 acres, the core area of Centennial Woods, through perpetual easements with the Vermont Land Trust. And I think what Sharon's speaking to is, at the time, there was a great fear that there would be development encroachment on that core area, perhaps like the Catamount, I think it's Catamount Run or whatever it was called, that recently got scrapped. Not that isn't a good thing. We need more dorms, we need more staff housing that's affordable. But the greater issue is encroachment on that core area. And the problem is that when you dedicate a core area, you probably know as a land conservationist, many of the benefits when it shrinks for wildlife, for habitat, et cetera, get lost. So absent and further negotiations, which have stalled and stopped between the university and the city, it would be great to know whether or not the university is planning on additional development of any kind around the perimeter. And ultimately, it would be really nice also once hopefully town gown negotiations get going again, that maybe Centennial Woods, and this is for the councilors, that Centennial Woods get back on the agenda so that perhaps a larger portion of Centennial Woods, as many of us originally wanted, could actually be dedicated so that the future. Sorry for a long speech. Question though is whether or not are you working with with a forester on forest maintenance and management? I expect there's folks on at the university academics that that are helping with that. I'm just curious.
There was there was a grad student who did the first set of forest inventory plots, and she did her thesis on that, and that was last year. And so we've got that data. There are forestry classes that go out there. As far as management, I'm not working with a forester. I mean, I guess I'm not sure what you're thinking of in terms of management, but with respect to things like downwood, I mean, we leave all the trees, we leave all the downwood. I mean, there's nothing being taken out of there. It's the forest is right now just being allowed to develop naturally. We have gone in and taken out some invasive plant species. But no, I don't know of a forest management plan for that area.
I guess what I would maybe recommend is that you get in touch with, there's, Chittenden County Forester. They're actually had a spot on public, on Vermont Public recently. And the fellow who was the forester now, I think, contracts and is doing it for hire. But there, should be somebody within the state forestry, state forestry department, I can't remember the exact name, who might be able to give guidance so that you have a park that's well maintained, much the way our city arborist maintains the city canopy.
Yeah.
Anne, can you hear us?
And is up. I see a hand.
Her hand went up when you were asking who wants to go on the walks.
Oh, okay. Who?
Might not be able to see her, Nancy.
Yeah.
Hi, Nancy Kirby. I am the gatekeeper. I don't need a mic. I can speak. I have a good voice, but okay. Nancy Kirby, I'm the gatekeeper on Colchester Avenue. My backyard backs up with the cemetery that backs up with Centennial Woods. I've had the pleasure of having deer, bobcat, a pair of fox, a moose, and 5 little skunks in my yard this year. And the more people you walk through Centennial Woods, the more I worry about my wild animals. The more I worry about the ground they walk on. Because when I was a little girl and it was spring, we were told either not to hike or stay on the trail. And I know you all know that. I'm concerned about the erosion that's going to happen and the many people that are going to walk through and disturb what's going on down there now. And I agree with Sharon and Earhart about the trees. I don't think they all need to be cut down. Let them erode the way they're supposed to. Okay. And when the ball game happens and the fireworks go off, the deer are in my backyard because it's dark. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my only comment about that, Centennial Woods is an interesting natural area. It's different from all of our other natural areas because it is in the city and because it has access to such a large human population and because those spaces are rare and valuable for people to go out into nature. So it's not our goal to keep people out of Centennial Woods. It is our goal to try to keep people on the main trails and not to add lots of social trails and dispersion through the woods. So that is one of the things that we've been looking at and trying to do. It's hard because everybody wants to come in from their neighborhood and they sort of make their own trails. And it's a little hard to stop that. But we are trying to put a focus on the main trails and not keep developing more and more trails in there for sure.
The official entrances to Centennial Woods?
Yeah, official. That's a good question. I mean, the one that's the one where we've got the big sign in the kiosk across from the public safety office off of Catamount Drive, the main entrance.
Where the helicopter near.
Yeah.
And is the dorm is the dorm that's not being built the one that was behind the hotel there? So that's one. Is there another one? Is there another one?
Well, I don't know if the one that comes, I guess the one that comes in off Patchen Road is official because there is a sign there saying, don't bring your dog. So I guess that makes it an official entrance. And then, yeah, like the other entrances aren't necessarily official.
Pretty official one on Grove Street. I don't know if that's what you mean by Patchen Road.
Yeah, I don't know the difference between Patchen Road and Grove Street. Does
Right off, kind of.
Yeah, I know where it is. Yeah.
right? That's
Okay.
the one I meant.
That's-
Yeah.
It's actually Grove Street, not Patchen.
Okay, Grove Street. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know there are other entrances. We don't necessarily consider them official entrances. Our trail system that we're trying to maintain is really, it comes in off Catamount Drive. There's an access trail, there's one big loop, and then there's another big loop, and they don't exit. But we're not going to try to shut down the Grove Street entrance, for example, or at least it's not in my plan at the moment. Because yeah, that wouldn't make any sense, I don't think.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah. Can you bring those? I'd love one of those things.
I'll walk
Yeah,
around in just a second. But let me introduce Laura Whitlock, who's going to tell us about the COLBARI.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Laura Wheelock with the Department of Public Works. I am here with representatives from VTrans and HNTB and fellow colleagues to talk to you guys and answer some questions about the Colchester Barrett Riverside intersection and the Winooski Bridge project. To my left over here, we have Bob from VTrans. He is the bridge project manager. Steve from HNTB. He is one of the design team. Mike from VTrans, who is managing the intersection project. And behind me, Maddie, who works at Public Works. Steve is really going to give you guys the overview, very brief overview, and then we will have time for questions.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, understanding we have limited time here. Certainly don't want to take up too much of that with the presentation. And certainly I see some familiar faces and names here. Know many of you have been engaged with the project throughout, and we appreciate that. But for those who may not be as familiar, we'll just do a quick background of the project and then show a set of kind of our most current plans, and then open the floor for discussion from there. All right. Just very briefly, a few slides. Some of these will look familiar for those who've seen some of the public meetings, and then we'll show some plans and can go from there. Just briefly, the project background in terms of the scope of the project. And again, this is more specific to the intersection, and we'll show some aspects of the bridge as well. Project, or as many of you know, reconfiguring the existing intersection of Riverside Ave, Colchester Ave, Barrett Street, and Mill Streets, and with the intent to simplify that geometry there and feature a more traditional four-way intersection with updated traffic control, modern traffic signals, and enhanced bicycle and pedestrian facilities. The project needs that we're looking to accomplish are improving safety and mobility for all users, simplifying that complex geometry of the intersection, enhancing the gateway into Burlington, and managing the traffic congestion. Obviously quite familiar to you all, but just want to give a quick highlight of the project site. And this kind of blow up here that we're focusing really on the intersection just to the south of the bridge and the bridge itself. Typically in this type of setting, wouldn't really discuss contracting nuances, but there's kind of an important reason we'll bring this up in that this project is a little bit different than our more traditional infrastructure projects that we put out. We're using a design build contracting mechanism here, and what that means is that We as the design team, with V-Trans in the cities, will develop the contract to a certain point where we can secure right-of-way environmental commitments, develop the framework of what the project needs to accomplish. And then we put that out to bid where a contractor and engineer team will take that and bring it to the finish line from there. So completing the design and actually constructing the project. The reason these types of, contracting mechanisms are used, and typically they promote innovation, they improve, design and construction efficiencies, and they reduce construction costs and schedule. What that means and why it's important to talk about today is that the final design needs to have some flexibility to allow a contractor engineer team to kind of play to their strengths, to tailor the final design to the types of construction methods they can use, the equipment they use, to be able to harness their expertise, to the greatest extent. So that means that the final layout, the alignment, the exact impacts may not be known, until we actually award a contract a couple of years from now. That being said, there are numerous checks and balances throughout. We get to define in the contract what absolutely must occur and what can be open for flexibility. And once those contractor proposals come in, any major changes to the contract, we have the opportunity to allow or deny. So it's just important to note. Schedule, where we are now, we're into that design process. As we noted, we're working through the right-of-way process, some of those environmental commitments, including historic consultation. Then we have the whole kind of contracting phase, finalizing our design, developing the contract, and then we're really not starting construction until 2027 at the earliest. So we still have a ways to go on this whole process. I'll pull up plans here briefly. We'll show kind of two primary alignments here for the intersection. It's important to note that they show pretty different bridge layouts that really are defined by construction methods for the bridge and what those construction methods mean for traffic impacts. The intersection layout is, in many ways defined by what the bridge layout that we move forward with is. So I'll show initially, this is an on alignment version that more or less puts the bridge back in the existing location and consolidates the existing intersection kind of where Colchester Ave and Barrett meet, and having Riverside turn into that four-way intersection there. Flip to the next option here. And I would note that, with this curved option, we're working through refining the final bridge curvature, trying to flatten that as much as possible. So this, that aspect of it is a bit of work in progress. But with this option, we shift the intersection a bit to allow Riverside Ave to be really the through movement there. That's the highest volume traffic movement. That's your US route, principal arterial. It's kind of the main road there. So going with a curved bridge kind of provides the opportunity to revise that layout a bit. I would note that some of the differences between the two overall options as we talk project wide, both the intersection and the bridge, that going with a curved bridge versus the on alignment doesn't require any sort of full bridge closure. It would require partial lane reductions throughout construction, down to 2 for a period of time, down to 3 for a period of time, and getting back to the full layout. So that's certainly one of the benefits there. There's also constructability and a reduction of just risk in the way this is constructed going with that method. For the more traditional on alignment, this would require what's called a lateral slide, where really the proposed bridge is built just upstream of the existing offline. And then during a full bridge closure period of, we're estimating 4 to 6 weeks, you'd slide the new bridge into place effectively. So, we're working as a design team to move forward with one of these. And at this point, it's more likely the curved alignment. But we're working through making that decision as a group, weighing those pros and cons, and featuring one of these in our design plans that go with the contract. That being said, when we come back to that flexibility that we talk about, we want to leave it open for the possibility of really either of these or a range within these to be our final option.
Can I ask a question about that, the drawing?
I do.
Does that show a bike lane that's going underneath the bridge?
It does, and that is something we're also considering. I would say whether we move forward with that, whether that's something that's included is still up in the air a bit, but it is something that's under consideration.
And the purpose of that is to give access to both sides of the bridge to bicyclists. Is that correct?
Correct. It's another option to get across if users don't want to go across the road, use the crosswalks. It's some additional flexibility. There's quite a few things we have to consider there and would have to work through those right of way considerations. So it's certainly not a done deal, but it's under consideration.
One other question, there's Mill Street there in these representations. How is traffic to enter and exit from Mill Street?
It's a good question. So one of the challenges here is that by relocating the intersection kind of more where Colchester and Barrett meet and a bit away from where Mill Street is, takes Mill Street out of the signal system. Obviously today it's part of kind of that three separate intersection signal that's there. So that would require making Mill Street a right turn out only. So exiting traffic would have to go through the circulator to kind of relocate into Burlington.
Could you repeat that the access? I didn't hear the response about how Mill Street would enter and exit with this design.
You would be able to enter Mill Street from either direction, same as today. In terms of exiting Mill Street, that would be a right turn only out through there, given that it will be no longer part of the signal system.
In either proposal?
Correct.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks. Mill Street's, that's gonna be a real issue. If there are no options for folks, folks have to, coming from the Chase Mill, people who live on Barrett Street, there's a major commercial operation there. They have no ingress or egress besides Mill Street. It's a dead end. The only other egress is gated, and it's privately owned, and it is right onto Chase Street, right near the Grove Street Chase Street intersection, which is in and of itself not an ideal place. I think I don't know if you've talked to any of the commercial owners or the owner of Chase, the Chase Mill, but I cannot see how anything that includes a left-hand turn out of Mill Street is going to be acceptable to those folks. To have to go all to negotiate the Newski Rotary, which is really, it's not really a rotary in the strictest traffic design sense of the term, is that's really problematic.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll just say is someone who lives on Grove Street, I'm wondering what kind of signalization you're looking at for the folks going west on Barrett Street by Domino's. I live across from Shinetska Park on Grove Street, and at certain times on Friday afternoons, and Laura knows this, we've talked about this, traffic backs up past my house. I can't get out of my driveway. It's actually an emergency. If there's a lot of emergency vehicle calls to Bayberry, 232 units adjacent to my house. If there's a real emergency at Bayberry, it is really going to be hard for them, for emergency vehicles to get through with these backups, as long as there's some kind of signalization change so that Barrett Street can flush more than like 5 cars at a time. Literally takes 3 light cycles. I was just literally going from my house to Newski earlier this evening. It took me 4 light cycles to get from the corner of Grove and Chase through Barrett onto the bridge. So I'm hoping that there's something in the design that changes the signalization of Barrett Street to flush travel.
I want to compliment his statement by saying, how are you prioritizing the design to accommodate these type of issues, like how traffic will flow. And also, is there too much traffic intrinsically in this area to be accommodated by either of these designs?
All good questions. Do you want to add to that, or do you want me to dive into some of those? It's going to get to be a lot
I
of.
just wanted to make a comment, but if you want me to wait, I mean, most of the people here have already heard my comment, or so a lot of people haven't, but I really liked how you've went through the various iterations. And for me, it just points to an obvious, this is the area you're talking about. To me, it looks like a circle, or it's dying to be a circle. It's dying to be a roundabout. I mean, that little oblong, or however you describe it, if you can flip through some of the straight bridge or the other ones, it looks like you've got 4 major roads going in there. Why not?
So how are you?
Can I want to ask. I think the roundabout is going to come up. Can I address the other?
Why not?
With the roundabout?
Yes.
Because they're related, but two kind of separate.
Why not
things,
get rid of the signalization?
To talk about the roundabout, I expected that would be a
How do you
topic.
prioritize the design features? What are you considering? What's the most important things? What gets the biggest weight?
Let me hit Mill Street first briefly. I totally understand the concern because this answer somewhat relates to that. It's a challenge with a project of this nature. We're balancing a lot of competing factors here. It's virtually impossible to put a design out here that will solve every single issue in a challenging environment like this. That's, geometrically constrained. It's a historic district. It's a residential area. It's also a principal RTO only U.S. route. It's a real big challenge, and it's one we don't take lightly as we try to balance all those competing factors. So when looking at balancing mobility, safety, hard decisions have to be made like that, such as Mill Street, allowing cars to try to, jump out through gaps and take left turns there, we feel is a safety concern. And of all those legs coming into that area, it is the lowest volume. So that, to speak to prioritization a little bit, and it's not all volume based, that everything gets prioritized by what has the most use, but that's a factor certainly with Mill Street. Part of the challenge here of reducing some of the overall congestion is, a design like this, for example, where Riverside is the through movement, that is your highest volume of vehicles coming through. So we're trying to, move some of that in a more effective manner. As it relates to Barrett, that's a challenging one where really in either of these iterations, that will in peak times continue to be a challenging movement and probably see some congestion. Part of the challenge with that one is you end up with a lot of non-local traffic that's kind of using it as a cut through, and it's certainly not intended. When we look at these types of roadways, we talk about, we use the term functional class. What's the intent of the roadway? What is it trying to convey for traffic? That's where you have Riverside Ave and the bridge that are a U.S. route. That's your top category. It's a principal arterial. That kind of Barrett Street's a lower classification. And, we do have a lot of cars that presumably aren't using it for local purposes that are cutting over from South Burlington. That's kind of a challenge that, we can't necessarily solve on this project. But from a prioritization standpoint, the other movements here, do get a little more priority than Barrett in that sense. As we, lay out the signal and look at how the areas function here. I do want to touch a little bit too on, non-vehicular mobility. Obviously a big aspect of this project, and this includes, on the bridge and through the intersection, is trying to improve that mobility for, bikes and pedestrians. Certainly today you can only cross at 3 of the legs, and it's pretty challenging to do so, certainly. So we're looking to improve that, both with increased width of the sidewalks and shared use paths through there, and with, improved pedestrian phasing within the actual signal system. So it's just something else to know as well.
Who's got a question?
I have a question, sorry. So I was on the city council when this first started, and Mill Street was represented during the regional meetings. But what I don't understand is there's going to be a light system for Barrett, correct? currently, when Barrett has a green light, so doesn't Mill Street right now. So I understand that the activity on Mill Street is much less than Barrett. There's no comparison. But why couldn't that light be activated by the plate or whatever you put underneath, or whatever you use now to activate it when there is a car that needs to either turn left or right? Why can't a small street that has business and residents, and it's just a neat little area in our ward. I don't care whether it was in Winooski or Burlington. Why can't we accommodate that with some creative way to allow that traffic to move in this design? Can you explain why that can't happen?
So part of the challenge here is its proximity to the main piece of the intersection here. And that's part of the challenge and some of the inefficiencies of what's out there now is you effectively have 3 coordinated but separate signals all in one location. So I mean there's operational challenges, there's safety challenges there. It's not really something that's under consideration there. And coming back to prioritization, we certainly don't take lightly that restricting movements and mobility is a challenge here. And to speak to coordination, we have certainly had a lot of outreach to various stakeholders throughout the project. We have talked to the owner and operator of the Chase Mill as part of this, and they're certainly not thrilled about it either. And we've talked with many of the individual property owners there. Again, it comes to balance, and it's a challenge to accomplish everything on this. A lot of these are competing needs.
One last question. Will there be pedestrian activated crossing lights at any point, or will at not at Mill Street, but at that intersection?
Yes.
So pedestrians will, and I value pedestrians. I'm a pedestrian, but pedestrians can interrupt traffic, but you're saying that the few cars on Mill Street can interrupt traffic. That does not compute for me. Thank you.
Richard, do you want to have the question?
Yeah, just to follow on from Cyril's comments and with all respect to the people who put together the document online about the connecting communities. You're not connecting communities. You're not connecting Mill Street. And it also gives very, very short shrift to the public meeting in Winooski in January, where 4 or 5 people talked about the roundabout. I haven't heard an adequate explanation other than the changing grade, which I understand would require some engineering. But I haven't heard any other explanation as to why we can't put a roundabout. Roundabout doesn't have to be round. One of the first roundabouts in England is in Letchworth, and that's like a dumbbell almost. And it's highly effective. We've all seen the efficiencies in the Shelburne Road roundabout, so you would have thought that we could get away from traffic lights and early 20th century engineering and actually put together something that keeps everyone moving. And you're steadfastly not doing it. And I haven't heard any explanation why.
Thank you. Yeah, let me jump into the roundabout here. I want to start with briefly my own personal thoughts on roundabouts, then a short answer, and then a long answer, if that works. I very much understand and respect the question. I'm personally a fan of roundabouts. You mentioned Shelburne Street. I'll know Mike's the project manager for Shelburne Street roundabout. It's certainly
Please, people, please.
No one's a bigger.
I work for him.
Probably in this room has got more design experience with roundabouts than me in Vermont. We have 17 roundabouts. I've been involved with more than half of them. If I had a goal in my career, it would be to eliminate and wipe out every traffic signal in Vermont and put it in the roundabout. However, there are situations in Vermont where that's just not feasible. This is one of those areas. I don't love it. I would love to have a roundabout here. It's just not feasible. Steve will be able to explain why here in a minute, but
just know that we take roundabout very seriously in Vermont, in Burlington, like I said, South Shelby Street. I would love to have one here. It's just, it isn't gonna work. And that's how we could say it.
Who are you and what's your affiliation and whatever?
My name is Mike McCroy. I'm a V-Trans project manager in traffic design. So roundabouts are my thing. And like I said, it would be great to have it here, but it just isn't working.
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, I'll continue on that. I promised a short answer to start, then a long answer. The short answer is we made a strong effort to investigate the feasibility of a roundabout here. And the short answer is we cannot deliver a roundabout here that meets the project purpose and need. We cannot provide that design that accomplishes what this project needs to be. The longer answer is that the roundabout's been looked at for years here, really, and it went through, the original scoping study. It was studied, it was ruled out as part of that. We looked at it further when we jumped into the project. It was ruled out there. So that's two separate independent engineering firms ruling out the feasibility. We have V-Trans, city staff. We've all looked into it in both cities, and it's not feasible here. To go into more detail on that, I'll start with kind of how it was looked at in the scoping study, and then kind of the approach we took more recently to look into it. During the scoping phase, it was looked at as an option here, and as you pointed out, Cyril, it was roughly in this location, obviously where it was looked at. Given the volumes here, it required a roundabout that was large enough, a multi-lane hybrid type of roundabout, that it effectively does not fit within the footprint here. This is a really challenging site. Obviously it's a historic district. You have a number of properties here. We cannot build a roundabout of the size needed here that doesn't require, actual taking of property. These are historic designations with these properties. You can't take it, there's a lot of, environmental and regulatory aspects to this, but the shorter answer is you cannot take a historic property, using federal money and convert that to transportation use. So that's a constraint here. And certainly we're not, that's not something we like to do either. We're not eager to come and, take on.
Which are the historic properties?
Well, it depends on how you slide it around, right? But
Which of the historic properties?
Which properties here are historic?
Yeah.
Like broadly?
That you would have to take away in order to do the roundabout. Thank you.
This is the most constraining one, the one in the corner here, with Colchester and Riverside. But there's scenarios where you could shift it around here.
That property is not in the historic district.
The property has a historic designation. It's not the historic piece of it's certainly not my expertise. So I know we have documentation reports that I believe are available on the project website that speak to it more, but it's a historically designated property.
By the feds or by the state?
I'm not sure at this moment.
Nice to find out.
We certainly know. I just don't at this personally have that at my disposal.
About the historic designation, because all the history, historic area of the district starts on the north side of Barrett Street.
Yeah, the line it's right here.
So the north side of Barrett Street and running along Colchester Avenue on the east side, that's historic. That's designated historic.
So that's the historic district, and then individual properties are separate but related.
Individual
in many of these individual properties.
Doing research on in the neighborhood about historic properties, and I've never found anything about that specific property. So maybe we can coordinate and just take a look at that.
Yeah, we have a whole a report, that was done. Certainly that is available, I believe. Can I keep going on roundabout? All right, thank you. Okay. All right. Let me just kind of get through the design progression briefly on the roundabout. So during that.
Can I just add?
we got it.
This final presentation on, I'm just asking that you consider or at some point speak to if the whole project gets scaled down. In other words, my desire to have only 2 lanes on the bridge, why that wouldn't enable a single lane roundabout to fit in there. I've heard a single lane roundabout will work there. I want to know why you're saying it won't.
Knowing we have limited time here, I'm not going to get into lanes on the bridge, but I know we've discussed it at length in other public settings, and that the number of lanes on the bridge isn't really up for discussion anymore. It's the cities, the V-Trans, we're all united on that front going forward. Design progression during the scoping phase determined the size of the roundabout, multi-lane, ruled it out based on that cost, a number of considerations. So when we came on to the project, obviously we noted advocates of roundabouts, tried to take another fresh look at it, tried to really get creative on geometry, laying out some unusual shaped roundabouts. What is really feasible here? Can we fit something smaller that, coming back to that purpose and need, we have to still accommodate all the users of this intersection. So even though there's certainly, and you're not the only one we've heard this from, that wants less lanes, less vehicles, it's not within our prerogative to decide kind of who gets to use it. Our goal is to increase mobility for all users of this, and we can't go down to a single lane. Basically, what we found is we were able to get some creatively shaped roundabouts that were more single lane in nature, with kind of a second lane coming off the bridge southbound to Riverside to fit geometrically, but then going through the traffic modeling, they were just woefully undersized to accommodate the traffic that's out there. And I know traffic isn't necessarily what you want to hear as a driver of that, but that's a reality for us of something we have to accomplish when we say of kind of those 4 criteria of the project within our purpose and need is managing congestion and enhancing mobility and safety. That's a big piece of that for us. So that's all to say we looked at it kind of in 2 different phases over 4 or 5 years, multiple engineering consultants looked at it, and we've kind of all reached the same conclusion that roundabouts are great, but that's not appropriate for this site.
Don't want to play God with a small g on which communities are going to be disadvantaged, like the Mill Street community and the Barrett Street Grove configuration, and prioritize for Riverside, which there could be more elegant ways of, especially going into Burlington, to deal with Riverside so that it's a straight shot and not subject to any constraints by traffic lights. I just don't understand why your devil's advocate is creating these sacrificial lambs, or in the case of Mill Street, I suppose more like Souvlaki. It doesn't make sense to me. Who are you going to sell that configuration to? I don't know.
I guess I want to sort of cut this off because we spent a lot of time on it and I don't think we're making any progress. So the question I would like an answer to is, how do the people here that have strong concerns about certain aspects, how do they continue to be involved and try to persuade you to change your design or come up with other creative ways to make this? Where's the opportunity to participate?
Yep, that's a good question. Many of you have already, and I encourage you to continue to do so. Use our comment, section on the project website. We do anticipate some additional public involvement coming forward, probably less of a formal meeting setting and perhaps more of an open house where we can have some of these, conversations on different aspects of the project. Those are kind of the 2 primary that jump out to me.
Are they going to be soon? The open house thing?
We're envisioning the coming few months. We're kind of working together as a group to come up with an exact date.
Yeah. Very, very quickly. Who has the power to make ultimate decisions about project design? Is this a V-Trans driven project, or is it a municipal? Is it one of the types of projects that V-Trans allows the municipality, in this case, 2 municipalities, to take the lead on running the show?
It's,
Three-party decision.
yeah, we're working as a project team, you know, we're all coordinating very closely in terms of the final decision making. It's,
The RPC, 2 cities and the state, they're all involved.
The reason I asked, I mean, by way of example, the Champlain Parkway was basically municipally, as I understand it, a municipally driven project with obviously cooperation with V-Trans. But I was just wondering if this was one of those types of projects where V-Trans gives the municipality a lot of, or two municipalities a lot of leeway.
No, it is not municipally managed. It is being managed by V-Trans because of its size and scale. It's beyond the capabilities of municipalities.
I mean, I think that's really important for folks who want to have further input on this, you know. So thank you.
It is a multiple party voice on violence.
All right. I think we're done.
Yes, thank you. Again, there is more opportunity. You guys do know how to get a hold of us. We've been very responsive to the budget responses.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's gonna be expressed.
Okay. Well, last but not least, we have Philip Peterson talking about city transportation initiatives.
Yeah.
And before you really get into this, are you going to tell us what you mean by city transportation initiatives? Okay. Go, you're on.
Okay, let me share my screen. It's going to be the express version of this presentation. I'm pretty sure the microphone can hear me. I'm not very quiet. Let's see here. I don't need to turn up the volume. Okay. So as I said, Philip Peterson, Senior Transportation Planner with the City of Burlington Public Works. So I'm here to talk about a slate of several different transportation related things that are happening in the city that you need to be aware of. First of all, we have the Plan BTV Walk Bike Action Plan. This is not a rework of the existing Plan BTV Walk Bike. It is simply a step back to look at data, current trends, what projects have we done, what projects do we want to prioritize, and it's also necessary if we're going to apply for future federal grants. You have to update your plan every 5 years to make sure that the city is committed to it. Here's an overview of what we've done so far. There is a QR code for a survey. We will have our first public meeting at Contoy's Auditorium on October 21st from 6 to 7:30 p.m. I will be sending this presentation as a PDF to your NPA so you can post it later and share amongst everybody. The next thing I want to talk about is the downtown speed limit reduction. So in the downtown core, the designated downtown core, we will be bringing to the Public Works Commission a speed reduction from 25 to 20 miles per hour. That's recommended by the 2011 transportation plan. This is allowed under Vermont state law. You can, in a designated downtown district, have a speed limit that is less than 25 miles per hour. All sorts of fun information about why we're doing it, which plans said we should do it, and why statistically, like pedestrian fatality versus speed and field of vision, stopping distance. What are some challenges that we have with reducing the speed like this? Well, driver compliance. How do we kind of like work around that? Well, we have effective street design, community engagement. I mean, really what we're talking about is when a street is designed appropriately, you know what it feels like to go the correct speed. Take St. Paul Street, for example. St. Paul, great streets before the improvements. It was wide, it was long. You felt like you could go fast. Now, if you're on St. Paul, great streets, it feels much slower. It's a lower speed street. Main Street, great streets is designed to be a 20 mile per hour street. Battery Street is in scoping. We're working on preferred alternatives that will also have a similar treatment. Going less than 20 miles per hour, that's a question that we get a lot. There's not really much of a benefit. We can look at other communities that have looked at doing that, and there are major design limitations. So what's the timeline for that? We're going to be bringing this to the Public Works Commission next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. So if you want to have your voice heard, feel free to come and say that whatever you need to say about it. The other thing we want to talk about is traffic calming requests. As you all know, there are several traffic calming requests in queue, or maybe you don't know. There's over 50, 25 are qualified, and we have some issues with trying to address these traffic calming requests. We're limited on funds, we're short on staff, and they're very time-consuming projects. As residents of staff know how long it took to get to the finish line for that one, which we still haven't reached. So one thing that we're trying to do, if you live on Grove Street, you've seen these wonderful rubber speed humps. Maybe you think they're great, maybe you think they're not so great, but we're trying something. It's cost effective, it's efficient, it's effective, it's dynamic. We can move them around in the city. We're collecting data, speed and volume data, as well as noise data on all of these rubber speed humps. What we're finding is there's locations where these low-cost solutions will be super effective, and there are going to be locations where maybe it's not going to work so well, right? And we're letting the data tell the story. We're not just kind of going by feel. The cost of an asphalt speed hump, South Prospect Street comes to mind, costs between $30,000 to $40,000 to install. All the rubber speed humps in the city that we put out for a pilot cost us around $17,000, and I think there were 12 of them. So much different cost. We looked at 3 different locations, one being an arterial, a major street, a collector, which collects the major streets to the low volume streets. And so these were the 3 different geographical locations and 3 different locations where we could get an idea on, okay, different volumes, different kinds of traffic, what's going on before we just go, let's put these everywhere all over the city. You can read all about this later. And then the other thing, I got 2 more things to talk about and I'm done. The Old North End Greenway, we're going for spring 2025 construction, hoping to bid that project out with our sidewalk contract. We're going to take that Old North End Greenway and we're going to make it permanent. Out come the planters and the bollards, and in go concrete curb and maybe even some stormwater drainage treatments. That's happening.
Where is that?
So that's the Old North End Greenway. I'll hold off on questions until I'm done. Last one I want to talk about is the Intervale Roads pathway, side path. We are expecting 2026 construction. Right now we're in right-of-way phase and it's moving right along. And that was the express version. It was quick.
So we had a question, Celine, and then
I just want to elevate that question. What street? And then I have a question. What street is the Old North End Greenway on? Could you just?
So the Old North End Greenway, or what we kind of tried to call the Wiggle, it's a connection, a bicycle friendly connection from Mansfield Avenue to, and I don't think that's even part of your ward, right? But it is.
Yes, it is. Mansfield Avenue is.
Yep.
Hey, look, let's get something straight. This is my 3rd public meeting tonight, okay?
Impressive.
A little punchy here.
Amazing.
So Mansfield Ave, and it connects back into Battery Park, basically. And it's just nice. Get you to Battery.
Yeah.
Get you to Battery Park.
Thank you.
Sherman to Battery.
So my question was,
Yeah, no, I know.
my question is actually about East Ave. I'm wondering if you can just tell us really quickly what the final vision and kind of timeline for that project is.
I'm not sure. We're working with the contractor to be completely transparent. We've had some issues with asphalt quality. And so we're meeting with them at the end of the week to discuss what their next steps are to mitigate those problems, because we want a high quality product for the residents and we're not going to accept garbage from our contractor.
I'm going to step in because Philip did benefit from your public comment period. The project isn't complete. The entire street was supposed to be traffic calmed. We had some challenges and concern about removal of parking to continue the chicanes further to Colchester Ave. So the way that we have left this is that we are installing what we're installing now. We are going to collect data to see if the improvements have reduced the speeds on the street, brought them underneath our traffic calming programs criteria, back to that 56-25-3. If it is still not enough, we will move forward with trying to continue the traffic calming efforts from University Road out to Colchester Ave. And if it is enough, then we'll stop there and leave it for a little while. About 5 years is about the time frame that we want to see things really adjust down through. So that is the long answer to that one.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's great.
So as a person that lives on East Avenue, I advocated, and so did all my neighbors at the lower end of the street, where it's the older part of the street and there's not adequate off-street parking, that you would strangle the people that live there. They wouldn't be able to have any if you took parking off the street. So that was the rationale. It was, and it's real. It hasn't changed. It has not changed. So I'm very concerned about that, because there was a commitment to evaluate, as Laura said, but hopefully you'd go back to the neighbors and with a proposal, because frankly, I don't think what you put in place is successful at all, but I didn't support it to begin with. So that's neither here nor there. And I don't want to, I'm not really, I'm looking at you and thinking of you as Mr. B, because you dress up as the bee on the waterfront. So, okay. Anyways, but the other point that I wanted to understand, with the speed limit going to 20 miles an hour,
Yes.
and no, leave that alone. I want to save that. Those rubber speed bumps. Now, I know Earhart lives there and he loves them. I've already talked to Earhart about them. I go really slow and I feel like my whole body and my car gets jolted from them. So my question is not so much whether they're less expensive, but are there different speed bumps that can be angled and be less abrupt, but still accomplish the same? Because it seemed like initially before you put the speed bumps on, it was like a little monolith. I was like, where did this come from? And I called and left you a message actually on your voicemail. But now you've got these, but it hasn't really reduced the impact on the car. And I'm really kind of concerned. I mean, it really jostles me and I go really slow. Maybe I need to go faster in order to cover, but I don't really know what to do because
Go slower.
I'm going like 15 miles an hour, Earhart. Okay.
Maybe it's something wrong with your car?
Maybe something wrong with my car. Okay.
Something wrong with the front end.
So I've lived on Grove Street for 40 years. And I can't believe how thankful I am that you guys used Grove Street as, a trial run. The only comment I will have, and Sharon, it's go 5 miles an hour. Really, I'm telling you, 5 miles an hour, and you will not get jostled. Two issues. One is that you put them in the neighborhood, and what happened in the residential part of the neighborhood. And what happens is I think, Laura, we've had these conversations over many years. We come speeding in, the speed limit or the speed advisory sign by Bayberry is back up and running. Thank you. That's great. It's helping. But still the folks coming into the neighborhood are the ones that are speeding. So they still speed past my house. And then they come to a screeching halt in front of the first speed bump, which to the eternal annoyance of one of the residents that lives there, because they screech to a halt, they, in the middle of the night, and they wake up. And I just want to also say that on their behalf, because a couple of residents really are finding that difficult to live with. So if one of them could get moved further out to the entrance of the neighborhood from South Burlington, that would be super helpful.
And that's why it's a pilot, right?
Yeah.
So this is why we're doing the experiment. And I actually met with that gentleman on his front porch with Councilor Carter. We were there. We watched it. And this is also what prompted us to collect decibel levels, noise data from the sidewalk to get a feel for what would work and what would be appropriate.
I think it's been a lot better also since you put the big signs up, because a lot of people just weren't familiar with them and they were literally coming to a screeching halt. And yeah.
Well, that wasn't ideal.
Thank you.
This is quick and it's kind of off subject, but I haven't been following the East Ave work. The information you provided tonight, the update, was wonderful. It's exactly the sort of thing I would want to see on a website, on a web page, that would just make it possible for everybody to know what's going on. It's not like a bad delivery of asphalt is something to be ashamed of. It's reality. I think people deserve to know this. I think this, and I've heard there's all these big deals about making this a new website and this, that, and the other thing, but it's the content that's so important. And if you can think of a way to kind of do live content so that people know this stuff and they don't just go back and I say, I haven't looked at this project, so it could be up to date. But so often what it is it's, when it starts, when it's projected to be done, just kind of basics. It would be wonderful if there was just an opportunity to tell the world what's going on in a little bit more real time, every few weeks or something, just so that people know. You get fewer phone calls that way, I'm sure.
And I think that is a great way to end our meeting.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to know about the speed limit.
Go.
Is it
What speed limit?
the 20-mile speed limit? Is it just downtown Fort?
So state law, we're only allowed to reduce speed limit below 25 miles per hour in a designated downtown district, which is determined by the state of Vermont. So
that doesn't make sense because you've got a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit on the speed bumps on Grove Street. And so that sign is, it seems like it's inconsistent with the law.
That's not, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you go 10 miles
That's
an hour.
what my lawyer told me when I called him up. He said, yeah, you give me $10,000, I'll fight you. So.
I just wanted an answer. Is it just downtown?
Just downtown. Yeah.
It's the same area that.
Did I know?
But you're talking about the same area where cyclists are prohibited from sidewalks.
Yes, that's right.
That's the area.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
All right.
When Grove Street is on for a larger traffic calm, when on that schedule?
I don't know.
Anyhow, thank you very much for coming. And I apologize for running so late. Hey, officially, we are adjourned.
Nice.